What's up, everybody? Today we're going to do a little bit of electrical work to my 1962 Catalina. Now I'll bet when you guys drag home your new low budget project, you probably bought it because it already has some good stuff done to it. I'm also willing to bet that one of those good things isn't the wiring. It just gets neglected and people just band-aid and band-aid and band-aid over the years. Over the decades, all those band-aids add up and it's not a good look at the end of the day. I'm going to show you why you shouldn't ignore it and how easy it is to at least improve it. Not necessarily perfect it, but you can make it better and reduce your chances of a catastrophic fire. Now, for the three of you who may have already seen it, this is actually a remaster of my very first long form video. We're just going to go through and clean up the editing a little bit. The camera work wasn't the best, I can't fix that. But the big thing is, I'm going to run it through my editing software so you don't have to hear me go, 57 times. Enjoy. Hey guys, we're back again. We're going to do another video with my 1962 Catalina station wagon. Today we're going to put on a one-wire alternator, and we're going to talk a little bit about cleaning up wiring on old cars. Even if everything works, take a good look at this. If you guys have original wiring that's 50, 60 years old, even if it looks like it's in good condition, there's a good chance you have corrosion inside your wiring, because water over time, especially if the car sat for a long time, will wick inside under the shielding and will create corrosion inside that old copper wiring. And old wiring is the #1 killer of old cars, man. It just starts fires. So today we're going to talk about simplifying some of this rat's nest that probably builds up on most of your guys' cars over time, and how we can fix it. So here we'll get a closer look, and if this looks familiar, guys, drop it down in the comments. I bet it does. On my car here, I put in a new end on this already. Down the line, I'll probably put in a complete new power cable, but we're going to try to sort this out. We're going to cut off some of this tape. I think that this connects, and if we trace it back, I think this is an original wire that they've spliced into this red wire over here at some point under some of this. So we're going to cut all that away and see. And then, if we just look at some of this, again, if this looks like your ride, you really should take a hard look at replacing all of this, because wires just shouldn't make hard 90s like that, and this one's being forced to by the old broken down shielding. On my car here, this stuff can just be eliminated. These are the original wires for the idiot lights, for the water temp and the oil pressure sensor down there. I've put mechanical gauges in there. So a lot of this stuff for your guys can probably be corroded or probably be replaced too. On mine, I already made some spot fixes where I just saw it's like, that's gonna start a fire. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna get rid of some of this. So I'll get you guys in here. We're just kind of barely getting started, but we're already finding nonsense. So first of all, always disconnect before you start messing with any of this stuff. So we were right. This red wire that goes to our battery terminal is spliced into this factory wire here. But what's weird about it is it looks like that factory wire they spliced to the red wire and also over here to our big junction block, which goes to the starter. So that's kind of belt and suspenders to charging. I'm not really sure why they did that, but if we look under here, look at this. This is a mess. We can do better than this, guys. For a minimum of input, of effort, we can do better than that. So again, if your guys' ride looks like this with 20, 30, 40-year-old electrical tape peeling off, take a look at it, because chances are you're gonna find stuff like that, and we can do better than that. That's gonna start a fire eventually. Get you guys back in here to look again, and we've got a lot of this old electrical tape off, and even duct tape, which is nonsense. And it's a mess, as you would expect. This stuff loops back around on itself, and we can't even really use our factory wiring diagram because a lot of this stuff is spliced in. So on my car, almost everything runs through this horn relay. So this is hot battery over here, and this little guy over here, I think, should just be ignition power. So we are going to build around those. We're going to eliminate a lot of the stuff that we can. We're not really going to mess with the headlight harness right now just because I don't feel like doing it, frankly. So mostly what we're going to do is just our charging system from the alternator. And I'm probably going to make a new wire to my HEI over here, because currently that's spliced into the voltage regulator, which I'm going to get rid of with my new alternator. So we're gonna confirm that this here is our hot ignition power. And then if I'm correct about that, we're going to run a line from there to there for our HEI, because if we were to run it to here, you turn the key off and the car would stay on. So we can't have that. Okay, so update, guys. Number one, I was incorrect. This is power under crank, not actually ignition power. And I should have known that because I had to replace this pink wire because that one was nasty when I replaced the starter. So turns out this green wire here, which was spliced into there, is our hot ignition wire. And one of the things we kind of discovered is that this guy here, when we're using our multimeter, that gets us 12.3 volts. So that's full 12 volt power with the ignition on. This guy, which runs to our HEI and over here to the voltage regulator, when we go in there, we do have voltage, but it's only 9 volts, which makes me think that this was the factory points wire and that this is probably a resistor wire. So that's a good discovery. We'll get that thing out of here and put a whole new wire over there because the HEI should be getting 12 volts. So here we have our brand new Powermaster alternator and our original 10SI externally regulated alternator. So why am I changing this? Well, there's 2 reasons. Number one, this was charging, but it was charging at about 17 volts, which is dangerous. So the voltage regulator wasn't working properly. And because I knew that I wanted to change anyway, now was the time. I didn't want to change the voltage regulator because I wanted to get rid of the voltage regulator all the way around. So here's our new one. This is a 100 amp alternator. The second reason that I'm changing this is because down the line with this car, I want to put air ride on it. Stuff like that is going to put extra draw on your charging system, and you just need more amperage. This one I would bet is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60 amps. So this guy's 100. Now, as far as the 1-wire function, that's not really necessary. If you had a later car that had a 3-wire alternator that was already internally regulated, I probably wouldn't have gone with 1-wire. I probably would have gone with that. But since we don't, we have an internally regulated system. This was just the simpler, better option. And the Powermaster starters, I believe, are made in the USA. Yep, stands right there, made in the USA. They give you a proof of performance certificate and really at a pretty reasonable price. It's like 120 bucks for a made in the USA product as opposed to saving 15 and buying a Chinese EM1 off eBay. It's just not a bad way to go. All right, guys. So we made some progress, had a little bit of fun along the way. So what I found out was one of the reasons they had a weird splice was because their hot wire to the HEI did not provide 12 volts at crank. So I ended up having to do more or less what they did, where even though we've eliminated this, it still has power going to it. And this thing here gives us 12 volts under crank. And then our wire here gives us 12 volts just under ignition. So we got that sorted out. One of our problems that we found out was that this alternator, the fan is just a tiny bit bigger, which is not surprising. More amperage, needs more cooling. And it makes contact just barely with our bracketry down here. Luckily, we have a ton of room for adjustment. So I think I'm just gonna go get a little bit longer belt and it should slide it up out of the way. So I just got back from town and we got 4 parts stores in town and none of them had the belt I needed. What a shock. So looking down here, we can see right here is where we were making a little bit of contact. So I think I'm just gonna hit that with a flap disc. Looks like we only need to take off like a 30-second and then just let it roll, see what happens, send it. We're gonna bring you in close one more time because it's finished. And I actually added a few things too. I went and got a proper HEI connector instead of just a spade terminal that was in there. We do have another belt on the way. I ordered a correct belt and it just generally cleans some more stuff up. Okay, so we're back in here under the hood of my 1962 Catalina. And you can see already, compared to where we were before, where we had that big spaghetti mess, this is a lot cleaner. So I didn't completely eliminate all of those wires that were for my idiot lights, oil pressure, water temp. I just capped those off and put them over here because I might want to install those again at some point. Probably not, but just in case. For the alternator, there's not much to it, guys. It's a 1-wire alternator. It's 1 wire. You can handle it. Make sure you do a little bit of research to get the right one for your application. This is an 8002. It's a 100 amp unit. It's going to be pretty close to correct for most of what you guys are going to be working on, you know, the 60s to 70s American vehicles. And it's 1 wire. it's not hard. In my case, we eliminated the charge wire directly to the battery. We're using this lug on the horn relay, which then runs from here down to the starter, which is where the battery positive cable connects to. So that's our charging route. That's gonna be different for every vehicle, guys. Like my 67 Firebird over in the corner, it has a power lug over by the battery. You're just gonna have to kind of figure that out on your own because every car is gonna be different. For our HEI, we ran a new wire from our voltage regulator, and you can eliminate this. In my case, it was easier to do it this way. If you want to completely eliminate it, you can. It's just going to require a little bit more work. The problem is with a lot of these like 60s vehicles that are, the whole wiring system is designed around continuing to have that. Sometimes it's just easier. That's up to you if you want to do a little bit of extra work to get rid of that. In my case, it was fine the way it is. In this case, for my HEI wire, we just kind of poked around with my multimeter and found out where we needed to be to have 12 volts both under ignition and when you're actually cranking. Because some of those wires, they don't have 12 volts while cranking. They'll go totally dead while cranking. So even though you would have power when the car is on, you'll never be able to get it started. So that's just gonna kind of be, you know, some experimentation on your part. You can run a brand new wire down to your fuse box to an ignition setup on there, and you know, it would come out of something like this. Not a bad idea, good idea actually. In my case, this worked well though, so I just left it the way it was, you know, ugly but functional. Again, we can look even where there was really gnarly splices. I went ahead and put some heat shrink over it because that's just gonna be safer. And I'll show you guys a picture, a still image of an up close shot of some of the wiring I pulled out to show you, you know, why it's a good idea to try and get rid of that stuff.
So I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this, but if you look close, you can see the green corrosion on the copper wiring. What happens is moisture over time wicks under the shielding and corrodes the wiring. That corrosion is going to lead to extra resistance, and then the extra resistance leads to extra heat, which leads to fire. And then this here is some stuff that you guys didn't even see on camera. I removed this before we ever started recording because I really was concerned it was going to start a fire. And this was all under electrical tape, but it was cracked. You can see that it's super brittle. You just got to get this stuff out of there, guys.
So I thought a lot about the kind of point I wanted to close on, and here's what it is. I mean, you see that we can put a few hours in with some extra connectors and stuff, and we can make this stuff a lot better. You should do that if nothing else. But the other point I wanted to make is if you look over at my Firebird, you could build that whole car out of a catalog. Whereas this car, this is a 1962 B-body station wagon. Pontiac guys call these cars Darksiders. I don't know if that carries across makes and models or not. But the point of it is, there's not a lot of aftermarket support. So with my Firebird way back when I was putting that together, I ordered brand new rear taillight harnesses and a new engine harness from American Auto Wire. And it's really not that expensive. And it plugs right in to your engine bulkhead. And you can actually set them up custom-wise for what you have. So in my case, I knew I was gonna run an internally regulated alternator and an HEI, and they will build the harness for you set up for those. So you don't have to cut and splice. Didn't really have that option on this one. You can get full harnesses built, but it's a lot of money. You know, you're talking up around 4 digits to get a complete harness for, you know, kind of a less common model like this. Now you could put in a sort of semi-custom harness, you know, from somebody like Quickwire or something like that. And that's a really good option. I've done that in a couple of cars, especially if you know your car isn't going to be running for months or even years. You know, we've all been there, long-term projects. If it's like that, yeah, slap one of those things in. In this case, to do that for me here would have kind of been the cardinal hot rodding sin where I would have taken a vehicle that was running and turned it into one that didn't run. And, you know, you never want to do that because this car's drivable right now. Load up my dog and go for rides all the time in this. So I just didn't want to completely take it off the road. So in that case, you do what we did here and, you know, make it safer while, you know, not having to invest hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars and, you know, taking it off the road for a while. You can get yourself something like this. These are really helpful. They're available for pretty much anything under the sun. The problem you're going to run into, especially on cars that are 60, 70 years old, is that very rarely do you have the complete factory wiring. So stuff like this tends to be really helpful for things like headlights, taillights, because those probably haven't been messed with enough, but the engine harnesses have usually been cut on. So I would still recommend buying one of these because they're not that much money. They're $12, $15, but don't expect it to be, you know, a total panacea for you, because it's probably not going to be. Chances are somebody's hacked on your wiring, and you're just going to have to get in there with a test light, with a multimeter, and figure some stuff out. You can do it. It's not that hard, especially with stuff like a one-wire alternator. Again, it's only one wire. You can deal with it. Get in there, clean your stuff up. Don't let your ride burn down. Even if it works, check under that really nasty electrical wire. Chances are you're going to find some gnarly stuff like we did here. Don't let what somebody else, you know, did before you burn your ride down just because you didn't check under the wiring, because hey, it was functional. Kind of last tip, I do this a lot with new cars. I will actually get in the habit after I drive them of taking the battery positive cable off, just because I don't trust it and it might save your car, your garage, your house, maybe even you. Get in there, fix your stuff, get them back on the road, get them driving. We'll see you next time.